Welcome to a new episode of History Glitch. Today we are exploring a breathtaking tale of ambition, corporate and scientific hubris, and an unforgiving battle against nature. We are diving into Hampton Sides' masterwork in the Kingdom of Ice, the grand and terrible polar voyage of the USS Jeannette. To understand this disaster, we have to look back to the late 19th century, an era known as the open polar sea theory. During this period, prominent scientists and explorers passionately believed that surrounding the North Pole was not a frozen, impassable wasteland, but a vast temperate ring of open water. The theory claimed that a powerful warm ocean current, known as the Kuroshio current, flowed up through the Bering Strait, melted the Arctic ice cap, and created a tropical or semi-warm sanctuary right at the top of the world. All a ship had to do was push past the outer ring of pack ice, break through into this mythical open sea, and sail straight to the top of the globe. It was a completely flawed geographical hypothesis, a massive systemic glitch in contemporary science. Yet it captured the imagination of the public and the egos of ambitious men. Enter James Gordon Bennett Jr., the eccentric, ultra-wealthy, and brilliant publisher of the New York Herald. Bennett loved sensational spectacles that would sell newspapers. He decided to finance a grand Arctic expedition to find the open polar sea, plant the American flag at the North Pole, and beat the British and the Europeans to the ultimate prize. To lead this monumental quest, Bennett purchased a former British Royal Navy gunboat, heavily reinforced its hull with thick oak beams to withstand crushing ice, and renamed it the USS Jeannette. To command the vessel, Bennett selected Lieutenant George Washington DeLong, a charismatic, deeply pious, and fiercely ambitious U.S. Navy officer. DeLong was a true believer in the open polar sea theory. He assembled a crew of 33 rugged, hand-picked men, a mix of seasoned sailors, scientists, and adventurers who were eager for glory. Among them was Jerome Collins, a meteorologist and journalist sent by Bennett to report live updates back to the New York Herald as the expedition progressed. In July 1879, the USS Jeannette set sail from San Francisco amid massive public fanfare, cheering crowds, and waving flags. The mood on board was triumphant. They sailed north through the Aleutian Islands, passed through the Bering Strait, and headed into the uncharted waters of the Arctic Ocean, stopping briefly in Siberia to pick up sled dogs and fur clothing. But almost immediately after entering the Arctic Circle, the fundamental reality of the environment began to shatter their assumptions. The open polar sea did not exist. Instead, they found a relentless, shifting, and terrifying landscape of multi-year pack ice. In September 1879, just weeks into the journey, the Jeannette became hopelessly trapped in a massive field of ice near Wrangel Island. The ship didn't just get stuck, it was caught in the frozen grip of the Arctic, forced to drift wherever the shifting ice currents carried it. For nearly 2 agonizing years, the crew lived in a state of suspended animation, trapped inside a wooden prison, floating blindly through the dark and freezing polar night. Life on the trapped Jeannette quickly transformed into a psychological and physical trial. To survive, the men had to adapt to the crushing monotony of the polar night, enduring months of absolute darkness, bitter cold, and rampant scurvy. They established routines, played games, put on theatrical plays, and conducted scientific measurements, all while listening to the terrifying groans of the ship's hull. The ice surrounding them was alive. Immense pressure ridges would rise up and squeeze the ship with millions of tons of force, threatening to snap the Jeannette like a toothpick. Lieutenant DeLong maintained strict military discipline and kept his faith, recording every detail of their surreal drift in his journal. For nearly 22 months, the ice carried them northwest in an erratic, unpredictable path. They discovered new islands, DeLong Islands, and mapped uncharted expanses of the Arctic, but the psychological toll was mounting. The ship was slowly being crushed. The wood groaned, the iron bolts snapped, and the hull began to warp under the unbearable weight of the pack ice. The catastrophic system failure finally arrived on June 12, 1881. After nearly 2 years of endurance, the ice pressure finally breached the hull. Water rushed into the lower decks with terrifying speed. DeLong and his men realized the Jeannette was doomed. In a frantic, disciplined scramble, the crew unloaded everything they could onto the surrounding ice floes: provisions, scientific instruments, navigation equipment, and 3 heavy wooden lifeboats: the first cutter, the second cutter, and the whaleboat. As the crew watched from the safety of the ice, the USS Jeannette gave a final groan and slipped beneath the surface, vanishing into the freezing depths of the Arctic Ocean. They were now stranded on a drifting island of ice, hundreds of miles away from the nearest human settlement, with no ship, no communication, and winter fast approaching. Their only option was an epic, desperate march across the shifting, treacherous pack ice toward the distant coast of Siberia. Dragging 3 heavy lifeboats loaded with supplies across hummocks, ridges, and open leads of freezing water was a grueling, backbreaking nightmare. The men had to make multiple trips for every mile gained, fighting exhaustion, frostbite, and dwindling rations. After weeks of agonizing struggle across the ice, they finally reached the open water and launched their lifeboats, aiming for the Lena River Delta in Siberia. What followed was one of the most harrowing maritime survival ordeals in history. In September 1881, a ferocious Arctic gale struck the Lena Delta, violently separating the 3 lifeboats in the freezing pitch-black sea. The boat, commanded by Chief Engineer George Melville, managed to find a safe channel and made landfall in an inhabited part of the delta, where they were eventually rescued by local Siberian natives. However, the other 2 groups, including Lieutenant DeLong's party, landed in the desolate, swampy, and uninhabited northernmost reaches of the Lena Delta. Cut off from civilization, facing blinding snowstorms, absolute starvation, and advanced stages of frostbite and exhaustion, DeLong and his men began to die one by one. DeLong kept writing in his journal until the very end, recording the tragic, slow demise of his crew as they ran out of food and burned their own boots for meager warmth. Months later, after the spring thaw, George Melville led a courageous search party back into the frozen wilderness of the Delta. They discovered the tragic remains of Lieutenant DeLong and his men, along with their invaluable journals, which detailed the entire scope of the tragedy. Out of the 33 brave men who set sail on the Jeannette with dreams of glory, only 13 survived the ordeal. The voyage of the USS Jeannette stands as a monumental history glitch, a stark reminder of the dangers of human hubris when scientific theories and corporate ambition blind us to the sheer, unyielding power of nature. They set out to conquer the top of the world, only to find that the Arctic answers to no one. Make sure to hit that subscribe button for more explorations into the moments when human systems, logic, and institutions completely crash.